Greetings, my fellow freeloaders, sovereign thinkers. This is L3's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Swampy Mango of South Florida. And today's date is Saturday, January 12th, 2019. So let us begin. Good day, friends. Thanks for tuning in. Beautiful day in downtown Fort Lauderdale. Outside. And I go, let me do a show. But why not? I have a few things on my mind. Then trying to scramble what I'm going to address. So, I like to say this. Welcome to Blowback. Sheriff Scott Israel. That'll be the name of this podcast. This episode to be exact. It took a matter of time on his attributes. And many of you out there that listen to my show for a good period of time, especially on Parkland, lighten my best to folks out there stating that he is a federalized sheriff and he has a witch hunting fetish. And there are other things he did I could say was nice when it comes to helping the homeless and all that, because there's people out there will attest to it. I live in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, Florida to be exact. But when the time came when horrific events occurred under his watch, especially St. Valentine's Day 2018, wants to blame it on other people, organizations, that was my hot button. That time I declared he was never my sheriff. I did a hashtag on there too. Scott Israel is not my sheriff. Why? Those attributes he wants to propose. Not try to be the head peacekeeper, elected peacekeeper of his municipality. One of the things I can say, he has the right to be heard for the Senate. Why take it to federal court? Do it on the state level. I was at the Mount Olive Baptist Church, got there a little late, unfortunately. Heard his attorney speak. And claimed there was no merit and anything like that. It's all politicizing, partisan bias, trying to blame the National Rifle Association because they endorsed DeSantis. And you know me, I didn't, not too thrilled about some of his past voting record as a congressman in a lot of areas, and I brought that to light. I believe DeSantis did the right thing. Doesn't mean I'm going to be his buddy and kiss the floor he walks on. Always got to remain vigilant, folks, wherever you live, regardless. So I want to be talking about some of the areas on here and address his executive order. So let's do it right now. So let's see, Governor DeSantis issues executive order suspending Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel. It happened on yesterday, the 11th. Today, Governor DeSantis issued executive order 19-14, formally suspending Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel, effective immediately. Here's a statement he has to say. Quote, Sheriff Israel has repeatedly failed and has demonstrated a pattern of poor leadership. He failed to protect Floridians and visitors during the tragic Fort Lauderdale International Airport shooting in 2017. He failed in his duties to keep our families safe and families and children safe during the devastating shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School on February 14, 2018. What did these facilities have in common, my friends? They were firearm-free zones, according to Florida law. Now we'll continue on here. These incidences demonstrate Sheriff Israel's repeated incompetence and neglect of duty. The families of the victims deserve accountability. It is my job as governor to ensure that the safety of our local communities, especially the safety of our children, is paramount. Government officials must be held accountable for their actions and or inactions. For these reasons, I am suspending Sheriff Israel from office effective immediately. And there's going to be a PDF format on here. And it says here, whereas Article 4, Section 7 of the Constitution provides a relevant part. The governor may suspend from office a county officer for neglect, duty, incompetence. You know what? Let's check out Article 4, Section 7 in its entirety. So you folks can have a little education duty here, right? Let's see what we have here, my friends, on Article 4, Section 7. Come on. Right here. Suspensions, filling office during suspensions. A, by executive order stating the grounds and filed with the custodian of state records, the governor may suspend from office any state officer not subject to impeachment, or any officer of the militia not in active service in the United States, or a county officer for malfeasance, misfeasance, neglected duty, drunkenness, incompetence, permanent inability to perform official duties, or commission of a felony, and may fill the office by appointment for the period of suspension. The suspended officer may be at any time before removal be reinstated by the governor. B, the Senate may, in proceedings prescribed by law, remove from office or reinstate the suspended official. And for such purpose, the Senate may be convened in a special session by its president or by a majority of its membership. C, by order of the governor, any elected municipal officer indicted for crime may be suspended for office until acquitted, and the office filed by appointment for the period of suspension, not to extend beyond term unless these powers are vested elsewhere by law or the municipal charter. So, based on this, it could be a catch-22 or even on appointees, but on C, it's got to be elected. Okay, so I can just go back to my order, so at least you got a more clarification of what's been happening here. Whereas Scott Israel is presently serving as a sheriff for Broward County, Florida, having been re-elected by the voters of Broward County in 2016, a 4-year term, and pursuant to Florida Statute 30.15, is a duty of elected sheriffs to be the conservators of peace in their respective counties, and whereas pursuant to Florida Statute 30.07, sheriffs may appoint deputies to act under them, who shall have the power as a sheriff appointing them, and for the neglect and default of whom in the execution of their office the sheriff shall be responsible, and the sheriffs are responsible for appointing command staff who are responsible for the training, response, and security within counties, including airports, seaports, schools within their jurisdiction. And whereas sheriffs are responsible for recruitment, hiring, and promotion of their command staff and deputy sheriffs, and whereas on February 14, 2018, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Broward County, Florida, experienced a tragic shooting, taking the lives of 17 students and staff members. And whereas prior to the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, Broward County Sheriff's Office had a total of 21 interactions with the shooter, including 2 indictments that an internal affairs investigation later found warranted additional follow-up. And whereas the first of the above incidents occurred in February 2016 when the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooter posted a picture with a gun with a statement similar, "I'm going to get this gun when I turn 18 and shoot up the school." Interesting there, right? And whereas Broward County Deputy Eason, acting on behalf and of the place of Sheriff Israel, did not complete an incident report, but instead noted a CAD, no threats noted, and info forwarded to SRO, which is School Resource Officer Peterson, at school. And whereas the second of the above incidents occurred in November of 2017, where Broward County Sheriff's Office received a call that a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooter had a weapon and wanted to join the military to kill people, and that he might be a Columbine in the making and was a threat to kill himself. And whereas Broward County Deputy Treyas, acting on behalf of and in place of Sheriff Israel, did not complete an incident report, but instead noted a CAD that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooter was autistic. His location was unknown and directed the caller to contact another police department. And whereas on February 14, 2018, Broward County Deputy Scott Peterson was at all times acting on behalf of and in place of Sheriff Israel while serving as a school resource officer at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And whereas on February 14, 2018, Broward County Deputy Peterson exercised the discretion of Sheriff Israel consciously decided not to engage in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooter, while the shooter was actively killing and attempting to kill students and teachers of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And whereas, according to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission report dated January 2nd, 2019, there were 6 other Broward County Sheriff deputies acting on behalf of and in place of Sheriff Israel, who were in close proximity to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School that did not immediately move forward towards the gunshot to confront the shooter. And whereas Sheriff Israel was responsible for developing, implementing, and training his deputies on policy related to active shooters. And whereas Sheriff Israel is responsible for inserting into the Broward County Sheriff's Office active shooter policy that a deputy may enter the area or structure to engage of an active shooter and preserve life. And whereas on November 15, 2018, Sheriff Israel stated to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission that he wanted his deputies to exercise discretion and he did not want them engaging in suicide missions. And whereas noted by the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission report dated January 2nd, 2019, and one moment, gotta do something here. Come on, brother. Good. Maintenance guy. What says here? I'll go back here where it says, whereas noted by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission report on January 2nd, 2019, Broward County Sheriff's Office policy for responding to an active shooter situation is inconsistent with current and standard law enforcement practice. And whereas even if the duty to engage an active shooter was discretionary responsibility for the exercise of that discretion falls upon the elected sheriff. And whereas the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission report further revealed a failure on the part of Sheriff Israel and his deputies to timely establish an incident and an incident command center, and whereas to meet the sheriff's duties to be the conversator of the peace, it is necessary for the sheriff to provide adequate, up-to-date, frequent thorough and realistic training to handle high-risk, high-stress situations, including mass casualty incidents. And whereas Sheriff Israel's deputies interviewed by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission could not remember the last time they attended to active shooter training or what type of training they received. Very interesting there, huh, folks? Absolutely. This is really disturbing when you look at this. All right? I'll continue on. And whereas on January 6, 2017, a tragic shooting occurred at the Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood Airport in Broward County, Florida, taking the lives of 5 and injuring dozens more. And whereas during the shooting at the Florida Hollywood Airport, the Broward County Sheriff's Office failed to contain and maintain security, resulting in a breach of airport security. And whereas an internal investigation into the Fort Lauderdale Airport shooting uncovered a lack of leadership by Sheriff Israel, including a failure by Sheriff Israel to establish a proper containment procedures for the crime. A failure by Sheriff Israel to establish a centralized command and response. A failure by Sheriff Israel to provide his deputies adequate, thorough, and realistic training. And a failure by Sheriff Israel to establish an appropriate response to a mass casualty and incident. And whereas the investigation also revealed that Sheriff Israel's neglect of duty and incompetence lead to the most of the law enforcement personnel who responded lacking clear instructions, objectives, and roles. And whereas Sheriff Israel has egregiously failed his duty as Sheriff of Broward County, and whereas Sheriff Israel failed to maintain a culture of vigilance and thoroughness amongst his deputies in protecting the peace in Broward County, Florida. And whereas Sheriff Israel has demonstrated during multiple incidences that he has not provided for the proper training of deputies, and whereas 2 separate reports into a recent mass casualty shooting in Broward County especially found that Sheriff Israel has not and does not provide a frequent training for his deputies, resulting of the deaths of 22 individuals and the response that is inadequate for the future safety of Broward County residents. And 2 separate reports into the recent mass casualty shootings in Broward County specifically found that Sheriff Israel has not implemented proper protocols to provide guaranteed access to emergency services, nor proper protocols to have timely, unified command centers set up to control a crime scene, leading to confusion, a lack of recognized chain of command, and ultimately a failure to contain the dangerous situation. And whereas Sheriff Israel has contravened his oath of office as set forth in Article 2, Section 5 of the Florida Constitution to faithfully perform the duties of Sheriff of Broward County, Florida. I will leave the Florida Constitution on my footnotes. You folks can read it for yourselves. And just to let you know, he signed an affidavit twice. And then he gets sworn in, you guys sign an affidavit, and it is available. Public records, sunshine law. I will proceed. Whereas due to his demonstrated neglect of duty and incompetence, Sheriff Israel can no longer demonstrate the qualifications necessary to meet his duties in office, and whereas it is the best interest of the residents of Broward County and the citizens of the state of Florida that Israel should be immediately suspended from public office, which he now holds. Now, therefore, I, Ron DeSantis, Governor of Florida, pursuant to the Constitution and the laws of the state of Florida, do hereby find, determine, for the purpose of Article 4, Section 7 of the Constitution, allege as follows. Scott Israel is at all times material, was the sheriff for Broward County, Florida. B, the office of sheriff is within the purview of the suspension powers of the governor, pursuant to Article 4, Section 7 of the Florida Constitution. C, the actions and omissions of Scott Israel as referenced above, as noted in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Commission report dated January 2nd, 2019, attached here to constitute the neglect of duty and incompetence for the purpose of Article 4, Section 7 of the Florida Constitution. D, if after execution of the suspension additional facts are discovered that illustrate a further neglect of duty and incompetence or other constitutional grounds for suspension of Sheriff Israel, this executive board may be amended to allege those additional facts. Being fully advised in the premises in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of the state of Florida, this executive order is issued, effective immediately. Section 1, Scott Israel is hereby suspended from the public office that he now holds, to wit, Sheriff for Broward County, Florida. 2, Scott Israel is hereby prohibited from performing any official act, duty, or function of public office, from receiving any pay or allowance, and from being entitled to any of the emoluments, excuse me, I was a little tongue-tied here, my friend, or privileges of public office during the period of suspension, which period shall be effective date hereof until the further executive order is issued or as otherwise provided by law, and the testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the great seal of the state of Florida to be affixed at Tallahassee on the 11th day of January 2019. He signed it, so the Secretary of State, and it was filed January 11th at 4:38 p.m. Very intriguing indeed. And one of the things, my friends, it is legit. Right here. So make sure I'm gonna just do this. Boop. Cool. And one of those times you have to realize even certain laws in the books did not protect those individuals at both the airport and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. That's Broward County alone. And it's very disturbing indeed when you have a man like Scott Israel, a member of Homeland Security. That's why I said for all this time, he's a federalized sheriff. Conflict of interest, indeed. Well, I'm gonna continue here. So I will continue here. So I'll definitely leave the Florida Constitution on my footnotes. Ballotpedia is real good, so folks, yeah, use it. They're really fantastic. And so I'm going to be hitting on here about Governor Ron DeSantis appoints Gregory Tony, Sheriff of Broward County. Today, Governor Ron DeSantis formally announced the appointment of Gregory Tony as Sheriff of Broward County. Tony, a former Coral Springs police sergeant, will serve as Broward County's first African-American sheriff. The people of Broward County deserve accountable, competent leaders who can safeguard our community, said Governor Ron DeSantis. Gregory Tony will be a champion for Broward County who will work tirelessly to safeguard our schools and our streets while ensuring accountability within the sheriff's office. This is an enormous honor and privilege to be appointed as Sheriff of Broward County, said newly appointed Broward County Sheriff Gregory Tony. It is my intention to embark on this enormous task to restore the confidence of families and residents of Broward County toward the Broward County Sheriff's Office, which also requires that I fix the problems that exist. I thank Ron DeSantis for his honor, and I commit to faithfully fulfill my duties to this office. One of the things I always say too, because they will have to protect and serve the public at the best of their ability. As many of you recall, I always talked about the Sovereign Immunity Tort Liability Act in Florida, which is Florida Statute 768.28. And of course, the case of Juan versus the city of Miami in 1970, which was done at the Supreme Court. So, trying to see what I can get my hands on here. Oh, one moment. Okay, well, we'll just see what the Miami New Times have to say about Gregory Tony, right? Here's what he has to say here. This is by Bob Norman. Update Friday afternoon at press conference. Governor Ron DeSantis formalized the removal of Scott Israel and appointed Gregory Tony interim sheriff. Read the full statement at the end of the story. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to remove Broward Sheriff Scott Israel from his post today at 3 p.m. during a news conference in front of BSO headquarters. It is much clear, but there is much speculation about whom DeSantis will install the top cop, which we already know is Gregory Tony. So this is came out yesterday. But there is much. The New Times has confirmed a political report that governor is expected to choose former Coral Springs Sergeant Gregory Tony as interim sheriff. Tony would become the first black sheriff in Broward County. Considering Israel is being removed as his agency disaster response to the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School last year, there is some poetic justice in his expected choice. Tony, after all, comes from the Coral Springs Police Department, which also responded to the shooting. By all accounts, did a far better job than the agency Tony might soon lead. So the agency, if I'm correct, according to one newspaper, said he retired during that time, but Coral Springs did respond a lot quicker, and there's some testimonies too in that MSD committee report. The 40-year-old Tony is also an expert in what BSO failed so miserably to do that day. In response to an active shooter, Tony was hired by the Coral Springs Department in October 2005 and assigned to a SWAT team in 2009 and promoted to sergeant in 2014. He left in September 2016 prior to the shooting to work solely at his company, Blue Spear Solutions, which, according to the website, is focused on providing state-of-the-art training and awareness related to preventive strategies and response for active shooter mass casualty incidents. He started the company with his wife Holly in 2015, which are still employed at CSPD. He has a master's degree in criminal justice from Southeastern University, according to his company website. Graduated from Florida State University. At FSU, Tony, a native of Philadelphia, was a walk-on football player, undersized fullback, standing at 5'11", and weighing 215 pounds, whom then coach Bobby Bowden frequently bragged about. According to a 2002 article on WarChant.com, the FSU sports website, according to the website, Tony packed up his bags in Philadelphia in 1998 at age 19 or 20 and set out for Tallahassee. From the article, Tony traveled to Tallahassee with nothing but a dream of one day wearing the garnet and gold. With hardly any money to his name, it took a while for him to earn enough to pay his tuition to get into Florida State. When he did, he wasn't long before he found his way to the practice fields. He worked his way into a potential starting position during the senior season in 2002, but then left school for the military, apparently called the action by the September 11th attacks. According to a September 2002 article in the Tallahassee Democrat, Tony passed on the chance to start at fullback this season to enter the Marines Officer Candidate School. Very interesting. All right. Other references to Tony's military background are not included in his listed credentials on the company's website. He also apparently had a small run with the law while at Florida State. He was charged with misdemeanor fraud for allegedly writing a check with insufficient funds, according to Leon County Clerk of Courts. Those records show prosecutors dropped the charge at January 24, 2002. Sometimes things do happen. It looks like it was an honest mistake. Tony sold his Broward County home in 2017. According to Broward property appraiser records, he has now an address at a rental apartment in Broward and Boca Raton, and also lists a residence in Greenville, South Carolina. One thing is clear: he no longer resides in Broward County. So he may have to move back here to be a little bit legit. So that could be an issue. Now I will continue on here, and there is a burning question: what are Tony's politics? Broward County Supervisor of Election Officer confirmed that Tony was registered as a Democrat and last voted in 2012. His voter registration in the Broward County is currently inactive. DeSantis issued the following statement. Sheriff Israel has repeatedly failed to demonstrate a pattern of poor leadership. He failed to protect Floridians and visitors during the tragic Fort Lauderdale International Airport shooting in 2017. He failed his duties to keep our families and children safe during the devastating shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School on February 14, 2018. These incidents demonstrate Sheriff Israel's repeated incompetence and neglect of duty. The families of the victims deserve accountability. It's my job to governor to ensure that the safety of our local communities, especially the safety of our children, is paramount. Government officials must be held accountable for their actions and or inactions. For these reasons, I am suspending Sheriff Israel from office effective immediately. There are some interesting things about him in this area. So he has some military record. Passed his. He actually passed his. FSU, and he got his degree and all that in criminal justice. So, and he sounds very articulate. He's not some dumb slug. Young man too, 40 years old. Hopefully one day I'll meet these individuals. I'll meet him. Have a little chat with him now and then. And like I said, you always got to look at the human element in these areas too. So he's got to, play the cards right. People are happy in Broward County. Of course, you got some who are like thinking that, Scott Israel was blackballed and all that. But when you're an overseer, and things fail, you say you're not responsible. As an overseer, you have those obligations. So we'll continue on here. This one came out yesterday, 7:0. It was updated a while back by Miami Herald. Suspended Broward Sheriff Scott Israel won't go quietly. Of course, he won't go quietly. This is by Martin Vassallo and Julie K. Brown. This is updated about six hours ago. It says here, flanked by members of the local African-American faith community, a defiant Scott Israel defended himself against allegations of incompetence on Friday and made clear he would fight his suspension on any front necessary, whether before the Senate, Florida Senate, or in state or federal court. Fight it in the state level at the most. Don't use the federal court for your issues, Sheriff Israel. And I say that out of respect. Israel is 62, a two-term Democratic sheriff of Broward County, was suspended by Governor Ron DeSantis 3 days after the new Republican governor was sworn into office. DeSantis cited a list of failures enumerated by a state panel that investigated BSO's response to the February 14, 2018 shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland. But Israel, clad in a suit and tie rather than his usual sheriff's uniform, said DeSantis' actions were motivated by politics, not facts. Sadly, this is not about what occurred on February 14, 2018. He said at a news conference at the new Mount Olive Baptist Church in Fort Lauderdale, the governor promised as a candidate, before he had any facts about the investigation, before the commission even began their work, that he would remove me from office. Well, no, according to the executive order, that contradicts what you say. Looks like you didn't read it to your people, to your supporters. Scotty boy. He added today he merely fulfilled a campaign promise. This is what about politics, not about Parkland. I don't know. Tell it to the families of Parkland that were involved in that committee. After expressing his sympathies for the families who lost loved ones in the mass shooting, Israel insisted that he had not failed in his duty. There was no wrongdoing on my part, he said. I serve the county honorably and I will continue to do that. So he said it's everyone but me. So he's not an overseer. He's a poser based on these statements. I watched a 7-minute video on him. Folks, I will proceed. His lawyer, Stuart Kaplan, said that not only would Israel fight the governor's order, but he would run for re-election when his term ends in 2020. These certainly were mistakes made, Kaplan said, but in every situation we could always identify things that could be done better. It does not in any way rise to the level to single out Sheriff Israel and hold him accountable for what happened. It sounds like Rick Scott. Sounds like flip-flop burst out with that whole Medicaid fraud. Remember that, folks? Absolutely. Clapton said they were still exploring avenues to challenge the suspension, which the government issued in its own news conference in Fort Lauderdale about an hour before. DeSantis appointed a former Carl Springs Sergeant Gregory Tony, 40, to replace Israel. Tony, a Democrat like Israel, will fill the remainder of Israel's term unless he ousted sheriff is successful in fighting his suspension. Tony, a Philadelphia native and graduate of Florida State, is president of Blue Spirit Solutions, a security company that specializes in active shooter mass casualty training. Israel has faced fierce criticism for nearly a year over its agency's response to the rampage that claimed the lives of 14 students and 3 staff members. 17 others were injured when Cruz was able to walk onto campus and into a freshman building with a high-powered rifle and at least 180 rounds of ammunition. When's a 22 high-powered rifle? Maybe long distance, but I'll continue on here. A report issued by the panel investigating response found that several BSO deputies failed to run into the building to try to stop the gunman, or were slow or inadequately trained to confront the killer and stop him. Meanwhile, officers from neighboring Carl Springs were largely praised for their response. Tony retired from the force in 2016, so he was no longer a member of the department when the tragedy happened. When he says, "Yeah, I served my county honorably, and I will continue to do that." The truth of the matter is, on this suspension, Sheriff Scott Israel done this to himself by using witch hunting. His witch hunting exhibition backfired on him. That's why he's in this position. Him and his lawyer, they could use their defense mechanized rhetoric for all they want. But it's a pretty bad habit on his part. And I do recall, too, he's still under investigation for other incidences, other issues. So like I say, so the truth of the matter is, friends, this is not completely over. It's just another chapter that Scott Israel done to himself. You're the overseer, the conservator of Broward County, Sheriff Israel. It's everyone but you mindset is irrelevant, negated, null and void. And your membership of Homeland Security, being a member of Homeland Security, is not going to help you either. I've been saying this for the past almost 9.5 years. When he ran for sheriff in 2008, and the campaign stated on his ad that he's a member of Homeland Security, that was a red flag. You cannot have federal members in local positions. A sheriff is supposed to be constitutional, not federalized. 10th Amendment stance. There's many of them, like Scott Israel, who are sheriffs, not just in Florida, but in the United States, have that same status with the governmental agency. Don't blame others for your downfall, Sheriff Israel. Take a look in the mirror and examine yourself thoroughly. You may have forgotten to review yourself. That's one of the things about human nature. We could be our own worst enemy. And the biggest enemy to Scott Israel is himself. But he does have a right to be heard in the Senate. To challenge this suspension. But I'm pretty damn convinced that 600-page document is self-explanatory. That's all I have to say about Sheriff Scott Israel. And I say it's time again, he is not my sheriff. period. I'll be right back. Alright, cool. So, next one here. Reference to police state matters. This one came out from Mass Privatel, which is a blogspot.com. Came around the 9th, if I'm correct. 8th or 9th? Yeah, the 8th. And I'd like to thank the Rutherford Institute for putting this out. Sharing this. It says here, DHS has equipped 400 police departments with military-grade sound cannons. A recent article in Mohave Valley Daily News revealed that DHS is using grant money to equip Arizona police departments with military-grade sound cannons, long-range acoustic devices, or LRAD. The Bullhead City Police Department has received $54,000 in grant money to purchase 100X model, 100X model, and 450XL model LRAD. The mass media has known about DHS's plans to equip police departments with LRADs for more than a decade, but has remained largely silent. A Washington Times article from 2009 titled DHS Help Local Police to Buy Military-Style Sonic Devices warned everyone that military-grade sound cannons are being used against Americans. With the help of Homeland Security grants, police departments nationwide looking to subdue unruly crowds and political protesters are purchasing high-tech devices originally by the military to repel battlefield insurgents and Somali pirates with piercing noise capable of damaging hearing. There's a couple articles you can read. Learn how the NYPD has been using LRAD since 2004. An article in Muckrock warns that police departments across the country are purchasing different types of LRADs to be used against Americans. And in fact, LRAD sells 17 different types of sound cannons to law enforcement alone. Hundreds of police departments have purchased sound cannons. LRAD boasts that 400 law enforcement agencies across the country have purchased their sound cannons. Law enforcement and public safety agencies around the world, including 400 U.S. cities, counties, and states, use LRAD systems and support equipment. Unfortunately, DHS is not content with just equipping police departments with sound cannons. According to LRAD application section, numerous DHS-run agencies and Corpus Christi, Texas, have acquired LRADs. National Operations Center, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, Domestic Nuclear Detection Office, Transportation Security Agency, thousands standing around, TSA to be exact, right? U.S. Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, U.S. Coast Guard, Federal Emergency Management, U.S. Secret Service, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. LRAD mentions over and over again that their sound cannons are safe and not a weapon, just like Taser, or should say Axon, have been saying for years. A look at Dan Richards' website reveals why LRADs were created. It says here, LRAD can be used in military training ranges to protect critical infrastructure such as ammunition depots, nuclear power plants, fixed installation remotely operated through Ethernet, military parades, natural industrial disasters, controlled demonstration riot, negotiation with terrorists and dangerous criminals. Sound easily penetrates through cars and into buildings, etc. And that is exactly what sound cannons are designed to do, to protect military installation. They are not designed to be pointed at protesters. As Harvey Pryor warned in the Mohave Daily News article, you have to describe it, LRAD, as a weapon. A resident Pryor said to Police Chief Brian Wilson, it is not just a sound system. U.S. courts are agreeing with Mr. Pryor, but will enough to stop DHS? Last year, New York Court of Appeals ruled that LRADs can cause auditory pain, migraines, tinnitus, and hearing loss. Several plaintiffs claimed that they still had a periodic tinnitus as of the complaints following year and a half after the protest. At least one plaintiff said he experienced constant ringing, Katzman added. Another suffered nerve damage and hearing loss that required medical treatment. These impairments fit comfortably on the spectrum of injuries that the court has found sufficient to state a 14th Amendment violation. Another lawsuit filed against the Phoenix Police Department's use of LRADs against protesters revealed that police pointed them at children, elderly people, disabled people, and pregnant women. Is it too late to stop DHS from turning police departments into quasi-national police force? I hope not. It's interesting here, friends, because and there's some videos on here as well that they used it. One time they used it in New York City. Looks like it was maybe it happened looks like it happened around New Year's. All right, and they used one in Illinois, and it was just totally unnecessary. This is what happens when you have federal overreach. God bless the New World Order, my friends. 9/11 is the road to a police state. They didn't attack us because of our freedoms. It's the road to tyranny. That's their damn excuse. Every state in the union should give these guys the middle finger. Why our tax dollars are being extorted. That's how I look at it. Extortion. If I do, I can go to jail. If the Homeland Security does it, it's exceptional. That's one thing you have to look at. Exceptionalism. They believe they're special. They're not. They need to be abolished, period. This is how you got to look at it. I've been in a question. That's why when that came out a couple of days after September 11th, I called it out as I see it. The war on terror is a conflagration with ourselves. Or war with ourselves. I would say this: everyone at the local level, let these people know, don't take these grants. You serve us, not them. That's how you gotta look at it. All right. One more thing here pertaining to police state. John Whitehead came out in the 10th. News buds. It looks like he may have to. May be available or not. We'll find out. I'll post this on here as well. Justice denied. The government's not going to save us. Here's a quote. The warlords of history are still kicking our heads, and no one, not our fathers, not our gods, is coming to save us. Journalist Ta-Nehisi Coates. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled it will not hear the case of Young versus Borders, despite the fact that a 26-year-old man was gunned down by police who banged the wrong door at 1:30 a.m., failed to identify themselves as police, and then repeatedly shot and killed the innocent homeowner who answered the door while holding a gun in self-defense. The justice of the High Court refused to intervene to address police misconduct. Although 26-year-old Andrew Scott committed no crime and never fired a single bullet or lifted his firearm against police, only be gunned down by police who are investigating a speeding incident by engaging in the middle of the night knock and talk in Scott's apartment complex. The Supreme Court refused to balance the scales between justice and injustice, despite the fact police shot and killed nearly 1,000 people nationwide for a third in a row. Many of them who were unarmed, mentally ill, minors who were shot merely because militarized police who were aimed to the hilt feared for their safety. Supreme Court will not act to right the wrongs by meted out by the American police state. Although knock-and-talk policing has become a thinly veiled, warrantless lethal exercise by citizens who are coerced and intimidated into talking with heavily armed police who knock on their door in the middle of the night, the Supreme Court will not make the government play by the rules of the Constitution. The lesson to be learned: the U.S. Supreme Court will not save us. No one is coming to save us, not the court, not the legislature, not the president. According to journalist Michael Harriet, more people died from police violence in 2017 than the total number of U.S. soldiers killed in action around the globe, which is 21, it says here. Most people died at the hands of police in 2017 than the number of black people who were lynched in the worst year of Jim Crow, 161 in 1892. Cops killed more Americans in 2017 than terrorists did, which is 4. They killed more citizens than airplanes, 13 deaths worldwide. Mass shooters, 428 deaths. and Chicago's top gang thug, 675 homicides. Americans are dying at the hands of the police, and the U.S. government doesn't care. In Kansas, a prank caller placed a fake 911 call. Attackers referred to as swatting that prompted a SWAT team to open fire on the 28-year-old unarmed man who has been spending a quiet evening at home with his family. The man was shot within moments of appearing outside his home, clearly confused to find his home surrounded by police on all sides, guns pointed in the direction and orders being shouted at him. Thus, all the blame had rested with the prank caller and little with the cops who shot first and asked questions later. In New York, 68-year-old former Marine was shot and killed by police who did a welfare check on him after he accidentally set off an emergency medical alert device. Although Kenneth Chamberlain insisted he was fine, police refused to leave. Eventually kicked open the door, zapping Chamberlain with the stun gun, shooting him with the beanbag ammunition, then killing him with the pistol shot. The cops were not charged. In Arizona, a police officer was acquitted after he shot an unarmed man outside his hotel room while the man cried, begged, and pleaded for his life, as the Associated Press reported. The shooting occurred in the Phoenix suburb of Mesa after officers ordered Shaver to exit his hotel room, lie face down in the hallway, and refrain from making sudden movements or risk being shot. Shaver, 26, sobbed as he begged police not to shoot, and he was ordered to crawl towards officers as he inched forward. He reached toward the wristband of his shorts. Brailsford said he fired his rifle because he believed Shaver was grabbing the handgun with his wristband. While no gun was found on Shaver's body, the detective investigating the shooting had agreed Shaver's movement was similar to reaching for a pistol, but it has said it also looked as though Shaver was pulling up his loose-fitting basketball shorts and had fallen down as he was ordered to crawl towards officers. It gets worse. You see, it's not just that the U.S. government appears unconcerned about the fact that the Americans are dying at the hands of the police. Right now, the U.S. government is actively doing everything in its power to ensure that the killing sprees continue. Take Jeff Sessions, for example. Keebler boy. While presidents conveniently time tweets distract the public and dominate the headlines, his attorney general continues to bulldoze over the Constitution, knocking down what scant protections remain between the citizenry and the Hydra-headed police states. And it looks like I goofed here. Here's an archive, folks. I am sorry. Time flies. Actually, it's January 19th. No, it's January 12th, 2019. I thought it was January 10th, 2018. But you know what? I make my errors too. However, what I'm going to add this to the memo so you folks can read it yourselves, okay? So forgive me on that, my friends. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you sent something interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please address to your correspondent with decorum. I will leave all my my footnotes on my Spreaker page. So once again, I apologize. And thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance helps for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.